You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host Lucy Norris, and on today's episode I'm chatting with owner of the Rolling Donut and Wildflower Cafe. Born with the delicious doughy baked goods running through her veins, this female entrepreneur had her sights set on growing the family business from the moment she was old enough to walk. Spending summers as a child helping her dad sell donuts from his stall at festivals, it came as no surprise that she would eventually look to carve out a career for herself in the food industry. Returning home from Australia many years later with a newfound hunger for success, this week's guest hit the ground running, opening up a brand new cafe alongside a fresh location as part of the Rolling Donut rebrand. Against all odds, she persevered and now heads up one of Dublin's most successful donut chains. With all that being said, here's what it's like to be Lisa Quinlan. Before we get stuck into the episode, I just want to say that if there is a drop in sound quality throughout, I'm very sorry, but in respect of social distancing during COVID-19, I've had to record episodes remotely. In this challenging time, we're all trying our best, so I really do hope everyone is staying safe and that you enjoyed the episode. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. I think as a starting point, it would be really good to understand where your passion for food came from and kind of your earliest memories of working in food and, why it became something that you wanted to center your life around.
Hi Lucy, thanks Emil for having me on today. I suppose it all really started from a very young age of working with my father at various different events and shows and festivals around the country. He started back in the 70s, just before I was born, making hot fresh donuts at markets in Dublin, and then that graduated on to doing the events, and then I came along and he used to bring me and my sister to shows, and I suppose that's where my love of, just working with food and being out and about and meeting people kind of started. And then I suppose because I always had a dream of taking over the family business, over the years I've just followed trends kind of with donuts and how they've kind of developed and progressed. And I suppose that's what brought me to where I am today with the development of the Rolling Donut. When I went to college, I did business with arts management. So I loved the idea of event management. I didn't know for 100% sure. It wasn't necessarily just my love of food. It was more, I just loved the idea of business and having my own business and being my own boss someday. So I suppose there was kind of a point where I wasn't sure that it was necessarily going to be in food, the course definitely helped gear me up to kind of realize that I definitely want to get work for myself. Mm-hmm. But I suppose it would always be in the back of my mind that one day I would do something with the family business.
So I saw that you worked for Coke and Red Bull as well, which I thought was quite interesting. So did you, after college, you went down the corporate route rather than going straight into the family business straight away?
That's actually really interesting. I always do say that that's where I think I learned about the power of branding. Because I would have, as I said, grown up going to these events and shows with my dad, but I didn't really understand branding and marketing at that point. So when I was in college as a part-time job, that's when I got a job with Coca-Cola. And then after that, I was on the Red Bull Wings team. And that's when it really hit home that, the power of branding, marketing your product. So I suppose it all built up to me gaining more experience. And then I went traveling for a couple of years and I lived in a van and I went around Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and that's, I suppose, where I really got my thirst for and my passion for kind of food and looking at what, the brunch trends growing over there, which hadn't really kicked off in Ireland. We were in the middle of the recession. So yeah, I suppose then I came back and I was hungry to get something started.
And what was your reason for coming back from traveling? It sounds like you're having an amazing time out there.
I did, yeah. It's family and friends. I just felt, my dad definitely, he really missed kind of having just the business chats at home. And yeah, I think Australia is very far away. So that was the only reason, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's probably the furthest place you can get from Ireland. So then when you came home, you kind of dove straight into two businesses, am I right? In taking over the Rolling Donut and slightly making it your own, but also opening Wildflower Cafe as well.
Yeah, that's right. That was a particularly stressful time in my life because, really was hungry to start out something, and I was frustrated because I had no money and neither did my dad. So, just by total chance, it just goes to show when you're out there, trying to graft, doors do open. An opportunity came up in a garden centre, literally through a friend of a friend, and they wanted to open up a small little kind of offering in their garden centre down in Rathouts. And when we saw the place, we just thought there was a much bigger opportunity to open a proper sit-down cafe with a full kitchen and brunch offering. And I suppose that's when my ideas from Australia and the brunch scene kind of kicked in. Now, it took quite a few years to get the word out, and problems with chefs and everything. But thank God we've a really good team now, really strong, and it's flying. Like,
how was that process for you? I can imagine, you've just been living this really free life, and then you kind of land and you're given this massive opportunity, but at the same time that must have been such a massive project to undertake on your own, when I guess you'd kind of had the vision to work just in the family business and potentially not kind of open your own cafe.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It really was challenging because the opportunity came up, but we didn't have the money, so it was a catch-22. And I just opened the first kind of old style rolling donut. It was just my dad's little hot ring donuts. I opened that in Ainger Street at the same time. So I didn't want to say no to the garden centre opportunity, but it was very difficult to juggle. I literally had to learn overnight how to set up a fully functioning restaurant. So between, even small things you never even consider, like how the food orders get into the kitchen, what's the best process for that, the ticketing system, how to serve the tables in the best way. It was very difficult. And then also trying to keep the wages down. So I was waitress, I was manager, I was kitchen porter. You're there till the end of the night. If a staff member doesn't show up, like, you're there till the end of the night. Now, thankfully, we have much better systems over the years. That's, I suppose, what I've learned. But from day one, no, it was very difficult. There was a lot of times I remember driving home from Rathouts. I had a commute to almost just beside Bray, and many a times on that M50, I felt like just throwing in the towel and saying it's too hard. I can't do them both. So yeah.
What do you think it was that kept you going?
I suppose a big, huge part of it was my dad had kind of worked so hard to kind of put us through, me and my sister, through college, and he had helped set up Wildflower on his credit cards. But yeah, it wasn't ideal, but he took a huge risk in doing that. So there was a lot of pressure on my head. Like, he would have went bankrupt, like, if we didn't make it work. That's basically it. His little kiosk probably would have went under because it was trying to help pay for that as well. So yeah, I suppose the will to continue was just he didn't give up back in the 80s and things were hard. So I figured I had to keep going.
And then, so as you mentioned, alongside launching Wildflower, you were also trying to keep the Ainger Street branch going. What happened there?
Unfortunately, I had to make a decision which one I put my area of attention on. I remember I was 27 at the time, and I thought there was, we had put more investment into Wildflower. I think we'd put nearly 100 grand into it at that stage, which we didn't even have. Like I said, it was on credit cards. So I had to make a decision, where am I needed most, and it was down there. So I unfortunately left it to be run by a manager at the time, and just kind of didn't work out. And yeah, that's the thing, I suppose, when you're really trying to push something new, unless you've good systems, a good, simple idea that can work, it's not going to work unless you're there.
That part of the story is so interesting for people listening, because now you're one of the biggest donut chains in Ireland. Everyone knows Rolling Donuts. So how did you pick it all back up again and reestablish the brand and get to where it is today?
Yeah, so I suppose, like, I didn't ever lose that dream. Like, it would kill me when I, would see all my donut shops all over the world releasing new flavours, and I'm kind of stuck down in the cafe, literally in the day-to-day, pulling my hair out. But what I did was I just said, right, that's it. I have to get the systems in place here so I can remove myself from being a waitress every day and just get out of get back into my creative zone. Like, so I did that, and I just had to make the decision. It's time. And I went did a few trips abroad, got some inspiration, came back, literally got my whiteboard, and I was like, right, what do I need to do to get Rolling Donut off the ground again? Luckily, we're kind of coming out of recession time. Well, there was a few shops that became available in city centre that I had my eye on. Now there are massive rents, like, I mean, top of Grafton Street, Bachelor's Walk. But I luckily just put a small little business plan together, went to the bank, went to Linked Finance and Credit Union, and between all three of them was able to come up with the funds, a small amount, but I suppose the rest was just convincing landlords that this idea was going to work. It was like Dragon's Den. I remember going in, but yeah, I suppose they could see my passion and that it was in my blood and from a young age. So took a chance on me, and we set up a small bakery, and I just kept ploughing on and with the donut recipes, and found some really good bakers to help me. And then that was it, just kept pushing it from there.
And what do you think it is about Rolling Donut that kind of sets it apart in what could be perceived as a relatively saturated market? Because I know there was a little bit of a donut explosion, I guess, maybe from trends on social media, I'm not really sure. But at the time when you launched again, had this happened in Dublin yet, or was this before the whole thing hit?
It was probably around the same time that it was all kind of kicking off. I did notice there was probably two other main people in Dublin that would have opened around the same time. So yeah, I think definitely social media trends for everything, like from burritos to burgers to buttermilk chicken. I think that really can just help with an explosion of a trend. So I think definitely for us though, the whole, I suppose that's why the tagline for us was so important. My mate helped me develop the brand because she knew how important it was to me that we get this right. You know, if I was going to take myself out of the cafe and put my full-time efforts into it again, and that's where the Rolling Since 1978 tagline came from. So that's basically, my dad has been doing it, you know, it's history there. It's not just another flash in the pan, kind of somebody trying to cash in on a trend.
I think it's kind of a nice way as well to let people know you're in it for the long run, you know, and kind of make that mark of longevity there as well. And everyone loves a good family story. But I think also the other thing that you guys did first, I'm not sure if I'm correct on that, but I think that you did, was the vegan donuts.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you brought that up. I'll never forget that week because I was waiting on builders to get the shop open on South King. It was to be and now is our flagship store. And I remember being really frustrated because they were just being really slow. There was big delays. So what I did was, I'm practically vegan myself. So I just said, right, like, I think this is something I'm going to develop anyway. Maybe it wasn't at the right time because I was so stressed out trying to open everything, but I had 2 weeks to do nothing until they opened, and I grabbed my bakers and I said, right, I have a few recipes here, let's crack on with this. And they were great. We all just mucked in and we launched them then when they were ready to do when the shop opened. So it was fantastic, and we're still developing them to this day. Like, they're tricky, but I think we nearly have them cracked. We have a new mix coming out now in the next couple of weeks, which will be even better.
How do you come up with new innovative flavors all the time to keep things interesting? Because I'm sure it's very easy to fall into ruts sometimes of not having inspiration for new things.
Absolutely. And I suppose the big thing when I started this was that I'm really trying to desperately like cut down on my own sugar. You know, the older I get, I definitely can't eat as much as when I was in my 20s. But so I'm very aware of that, and I'm always trying to come up with as many fresh flavors that we can make in-house ourselves from, you know, natural ingredients. And it's hard sometimes to strike that balance, because when we do, say we launched, I remember, like a breakfast donut. It was a beautiful fresh raspberry glaze with granola, fresh homemade granola, and it just didn't sell, and I was really sad. And there's been a few like that we just have to admit, you know, they may not be top sellers, but they're still great flavors. Another ones are lemon curd, like it's a fresh lemon curd filling, but it's not a big seller. But then the Kinder Buenos and the Nutella will absolutely fly out the door. So it's trying to strike that balance between, the staff are great as well. They'll always give us tips, and we also leave suggestions boxes in the shops. But other things, it'll just come from, you know, inspiration within our own team of what we've seen or flavors we like ourselves. But yeah, it's always the ones that we think are going to fly that don't, and then the kind of the brand names do always sell well, you know.
I think that's really interesting because with the rise of social media now and things, you kind of, I think there's an assumption that everyone will go for the alternative, quirky stuff just to take a picture. But then it's funny that the traditional kind of chocolate flavors are the ones that sell.
Absolutely, it's so true. Like, yeah, there is definitely a rise in it. Like, there is so many people who are, and including myself. I'm, you know, I don't drink, I don't eat dairy or anything, but I will definitely indulge in a Nutella donut. Like, it is a hard one to strike the balance of, definitely.
Do you ever worry that, you know, the whole donut trend kind of thing might plateau and that your business might be in trouble? I know that you've kind of set very solid foundations and you probably will always have that core customer, but do you ever worry that maybe the ones that kind of just come on at the end because they've seen something on social media will die off?
Like, I definitely think that it has plateaued. I think I said this maybe a year ago in an interview there with Dublin Live. I think, like, obviously we knew that there's going to be an element of honeymoon period. There always is with every shop or restaurant, I think, when it opens. But I think thankfully we have kind of plateaued now, and it's 4 years on since we, you know, developed a new rolling donut brand. And thankfully we're as busy as ever, and we've just opened another new shop there in Whitewater and Nice. And yeah, I suppose I invested quite a bit of time and energy in our online store there a few years ago, and like, as you can imagine now, we're absolutely out the door with the whole traveling restrictions. So
Yeah.
the online stuff is grown massively in the last couple of years. It's great. Like, there's a lot of corporate people, you know, sending treats to their teams, and people just send them for birthdays. So that's growing, which is great.
And then also just touching briefly on COVID-19. I know everyone's sick to death of speaking about it, but I think we can't ignore it. How has that impacted on your business, and how do you think that it will potentially change how you operate afterwards, if at all?
Well, I suppose, yeah, okay, so it has changed things massively. Like, we've 7 shops, had to close them all down overnight, which was heartbreaking. But I'm very confident that, you know, the staff know that as soon as we open back up, everyone's going to be back working in their jobs. So out of about nearly 100 staff, we've only been able to keep like 8 of us on. So that's the real killer. Just, I miss chatting to all the staff and, you know, seeing how everybody is. But we will get through it, and we'll get back open. And as I said, the online stuff is absolutely out the door because of it. So I'm really, really happy that I persevered with our website, because it's not easy to set up online stuff, and especially when it's customized to our bakery. So that's kind of paid off now.
What do you want to see this company do? Like, do you have a set of goals for what you want to achieve with it, or is it all just kind of taking it as it comes?
Yeah, I suppose the first few years, when I just hit 30 and kind of opened, I was just dead set on conquering the whole world with rolling donut. And although I'd absolutely love to see that happen, I suppose you have to get your priorities straight. I'm coming into my mid-30s now, and, you know, I do need to think about the whole, you know, do I want to settle down a bit more, because it does take up it already takes up my entire life. But I suppose stress is a huge thing that I'm very aware of. So yeah, it just depends. I've an amazing new general manager. He's the head of operations now, and he's taken a huge amount of pressure off my shoulders. So I think that's really important for anyone who's kind of expanding, that they need a right hand person for sure, because I don't think it'd be worth doing it all on my own. And yeah, who knows now, maybe with Cian on board, we can definitely get shops open in all the major cities in Ireland. And then who knows, I'd love to get over to UK someday as well. So that would be the next kind of, the kind of 3-year plan.
I guess just going back to you as a founder, throughout the whole process, I'm sure there was, you know, a lot of ups and downs, but do you remember a particular challenge that ever set you back or made you want to give up?
I'll tell you what, it's interesting. I think the experience that I got from opening that cafe overnight with no experience, I think that broke me down. So like, I think any knocks that I was going to have, I had during that period, because I had major problems with chefs, unfortunately. I just made all the wrong decisions with equipment as well. It all used to break down. there was huge problems with getting power. That we needed power there. It didn't exist in the countryside. So I think, like I said, every problem that I hit I had it with Wildflower. So when I got to opening and expanding Rolling Donut, I actually found it easy in comparison. So yeah, it's interesting. I definitely think for anyone who's, getting into food, certainly for me anyway, what I learned was that takeaway is so much easier than a sit down place, because there's just the labor costs are just so much more intense, and then also just cleaning up and dishes, and it's all extra staff. Whereas takeaway, if you can get one kind of product and make simple and to take away, it's a lot easier.
And what is happening with Wildflower at the moment? Is it still very much, your thriving business, or have you taken a step back from there?
Yeah, well, as I said, Cian is managing, he's head of operations. So I have a really great manager down there. And then I also have Cian, who manages the whole group. And then, no, it's actually thriving. We just put a beautiful new extension on. It's like an outdoor-indoor kind of feel. It's like a flower and everything. And that's an extra, I think, 35 seats. And then we've put a big extension on the side of the kitchen, so we can bring in a lot more people, because we were turning a lot of people away because there wasn't space. But now, no, it's once we get back open from this COVID hump, we should be hopefully really busy again, because hopefully we'll get open this summer. People love to go to garden centres in the summer.
If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through all of the experiences you've been through and all of the ups and downs, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self moving forward in life?
That's a good question. I suppose would probably be, like, especially for me, because I do get pretty stressed, would be don't sweat the small stuff, because if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't let it stress you out now, because I probably did over the years get a little bit wound up, and maybe I'm a bit reactive to situations, where if you just kind of wait, and sometimes things will just work themselves out naturally. So yeah, probably don't sweat the small stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time out to speak to me. I really, really appreciate it, and your story has been so inspiring.
Oh, thanks, Lucy. It's great to chat to you. Some great questions.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @whatitslike_pod on Instagram and Facebook. For more information on the Rolling Donut and Wildflower Cafe, visit the links in the show notes. I'll be back next week with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luz.